Somewhere in New Jersey, a company spent $300 million to drill a tunnel through a mountain. Not for oil. Not for water. For 1.5 thousandths of a second. That's the time it takes you to blink, divided by about 200. And to a Wall Street firm, that sliver of time is worth more than the mountain. Welcome to the strangest arms race on Earth, where the enemy isn't a rival nation, it's a fundamental constant of physics, the speed of light. And we are, right now, losing the war by about 2%. Let me explain why that 2% is where billions of dollars live. Let's start with the thing nobody can cheat. Information has a speed limit. Light in a vacuum travels at 299,792 kilometers per second. That's the cosmic speed limit, the one Einstein put on the universe, and there are no exceptions, no appeals, no talking to the manager. Nothing carrying information can go faster. Not your stock order, not your text message, not your strongly worded email to customer service. Now here's the catch. When light travels through a fiber optic cable, the glass threads that carry the internet, it slows down. Glass is denser than empty space, so light only manages about 200,000 kilometers per second in there. That's roughly 2/3 of its top speed. Light goes through glass the way you go through airport security, technically moving, deeply annoyed about it. This matters because the two most important locations in American finance are about 1,180 kilometers apart. In Chicago, you've got the futures market, where people trade contracts on the S&P 500. In New Jersey, you've got the stock exchanges, the NYSE and NASDAQ. And these two places are constantly gossiping. When the price moves in Chicago, New Jersey wants to know immediately. So how fast can that news travel? Distance divided by speed. 1,180 kilometers, divided by 200,000 kilometers per second, gives you about 5.9 milliseconds one way. Round trip, send and reply, you're looking at roughly 12 milliseconds. That is the window. Every single trading decision between these two cities has to happen inside that 12 millisecond box. And an entire industry has decided that 12 milliseconds is, frankly, an outrage. But why? Why would anyone care about milliseconds? To answer that, we need to talk about the beautiful, slightly larcenous practice of latency arbitrage. Here's the setup. The same stock, say an S&P 500 index fund, doesn't trade in just one place. It trades on a dozen exchanges at once. Now, in a perfect world, the price would be identical everywhere, updating instantly. We do not live in that world. We live in a world bound by the speed of light, remember? So when the price ticks up on one exchange, there's a brief moment, a few microseconds, before the other exchanges find out. In that moment, the price on the other exchanges is stale. It's wrong. It's a price from the past, sitting there like a price tag the store forgot to update. And if you're fast enough to see the new price on exchange A and fire an order at the old price on exchange B before it catches up, congratulations, you've made money on information that literally everyone will have in a few microseconds. You just had it first. Now, the profit on any single trade is microscopic. We're talking fractions of a penny. This is not a heist movie. Nobody's backing up a truck. But do this millions of times a day, every trading day, and those fractions of pennies stack into billions of dollars a year. It's the financial equivalent of stealing the rounding errors, except completely legal, and you needed a tunnel through a mountain to do it. Which brings us back to the tunnel. In 2010, a company called Spread Networks looked at the existing fiber routes between Chicago and New Jersey and noticed they were, well, wiggly. They followed railroads and highways, which curve around rivers and towns and the occasional historical landmark. That meandering path was about 1,500 kilometers long. And Spread Networks thought, what if we just drew a straight line through the Allegheny Mountains? Literally through them. So they spent $300 million digging the straightest possible fiber route. Geometry, after all, has opinions about the shortest distance between 2 points, and that opinion is a straight line. By cutting the distance from 1,500 kilometers down to 1,180, they dropped the round-trip time from 14.5 milliseconds to 13.1 milliseconds. They saved 1.4 milliseconds. For that 1.4 milliseconds, they charged firms $300,000 per month. And firms paid it, not because they wanted to be fast, but because they were terrified of being slow. If your competitor has the tunnel and you don't, you're the one with the stale prices. You're the store that forgot to change the tag. So everyone bought in, and Spread Networks made a fortune renting out a hole in a mountain. But physics had a cruel surprise waiting for Spread Networks. Remember how light slows down in glass? Well, light through air barely slows down at all. Air has a refractive index of about 1.0003, which is mathematician speak for basically a vacuum. Glass is 1.5. So a signal beamed through the open air is about 50% faster than the same signal crawling through a fiber cable. Enter the microwave tower. A company called McKay Brothers built a chain of microwave relay towers marching from Chicago to New Jersey, each one beaming the signal to the next like the world's most expensive game of telephone. By sending data through the air instead of glass, they dropped the round trip from 13 milliseconds down to about 8.5. They didn't just beat the $300 million tunnel, they lapped it. So is the tunnel worthless? Not quite. Microwave has a fatal flaw: bandwidth. You can't push much data through it, and, this is my favorite part, it stops working in the rain. The most sophisticated financial technology on the planet, brought to its knees by weather your grandmother could predict by her knee. So firms use both. Microwave for the urgent, tiny signals where speed is everything. Fiber for the heavy data. Rain falls, they fall back to glass. It's a beautiful system held together by the unspoken agreement that it absolutely must not be cloudy. Now let's say your signal wins the race to New Jersey. You're not done, because at the exchange, all the orders pile into a line. And the math of that line is a whole field called queuing theory. Picture the exchange's matching engine as a single cashier processing one order at a time, in the order they arrive, first in, first out. Orders show up at random intervals, which mathematicians model as something called a Poisson process, which is a fancy way of saying we genuinely cannot predict when the next one shows up, but we know the average. If two orders land within the same clock tick, often just 1 microsecond, the one that got there first wins. There is no tie. There is no participation trophy. First in line gets the trade, everyone else gets the leftovers. This is why firms obsess over nanoseconds. A nanosecond is a billionth of a second. In 1 nanosecond, light travels about 30 centimeters, roughly 1 foot. So being 1 foot closer to the exchange could, in principle, win you the race. Which is why we arrive at the absurd final frontier, the last 100 feet. Exchanges rent out rack space inside their own data centers, right next to the matching engine. This is called collocation, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You put your computer in the exchange's building so your orders have less distance to travel. Now, the exchanges, to their credit, try to keep it fair. Every firm gets the same length of cable, even if that means coiling up slack so the close servers and the far servers are equidistant. It's the data center equivalent of making everyone start at the same line. But firms still optimize everything else. They replace ordinary software with specialized chips called FPGAs that make trading decisions in hardware, skipping the slow, thoughtful part where a computer normally consults its operating system. They use techniques with names like kernel bypass and direct memory access, which all translate roughly to please, computer, stop thinking and just react. The last few microseconds of this global race happen inside a single building, between machines that are technically next-door neighbors. At this point you might be thinking, this is insane. And you're not alone. A man named Brad Katsuyama thought the same thing, and he did something about it. He founded an exchange called EX, and he gave it a feature no one had ever wanted before: a deliberate delay. EX added a 350 microsecond speed bump to every order. How? With a coil of fiber optic cable. 38 miles of it, wound up in a box. Do the math. 38 miles is about 61 kilometers, and at 200,000 kilometers per second, that's roughly 305 microseconds of pure, intentional lag. A traffic calming device for light itself. And here's the elegant part. That tiny delay is long enough to wipe out latency arbitrage. By the time your speedy order arrives, the stale prices have already updated, so there's nothing to exploit. But it's short enough that a normal human investor never notices. EX didn't try to win the speed race. They just looped a few miles of glass into a knot and made the race pointless. Sometimes the best move in an arms race is to refuse to play. So does any of this actually matter to the real world? Let me leave you with what happens when this machinery gets pointed at a falling market. On June 6, 2026, the chipmaker ETF known as SOXX dropped 10% in a single session. The trigger was a disappointing forecast from Broadcom on an earnings call. Within milliseconds, HFT algorithms had detected the bad news and started dumping every semiconductor stock they touched. The cascade rolled outward through the entire sector. $1 trillion of value, gone. Faster than a human could finish reading the headline that caused it. Think about that. The speed of the crash was the speed of information through the network of trading machines. The same physics we've been talking about. Light through glass, light through air, orders in a queue. That physics is the crash. We built a nervous system for the global economy, and it has reflexes faster than thought. So here's the big picture. The speed of light is a hard wall built into the universe. We can't break it, can't bend it, can't negotiate. The entire high-frequency trading industry is a species-wide effort to get as close to that wall as physically possible. Straighter cables, faster towers, shorter queues. And we've already gotten within about 98% of the theoretical limit. The remaining 2%, that last, agonizing sliver between fiber and vacuum, Between 13 milliseconds and the absolute floor, that 2% is where billions of dollars live, and where some very smart people will spend their entire careers fighting Einstein for scraps. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to Improper Integral for more visual math and science, where we go fast, but never faster than the speed of light. We checked.